Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The Breakfast Murder Club. A hush fell upon the gathering at the large clover-shaped mansion that Lucky the Lucky Charms leprechaun lived in. The guests looked in horror and sadness as they saw the body of the effusive leprechaun floating in the large clover-shaped pool that was located in the courtyard of the luxurious estate. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Snap, Crackle, and Pop all stood silently staring at the corpse. While their first impulse was to consider it an accidental death by drowning, something about the mangled nature of the body didn't add up. Casting even further doubt on the death by drowning theory was the large metal blade protruding from Lucky's back, with blood flowing freely out of the wound and into the pool water. After a long and agonizing silence, Buzz was the first to speak. "Looks like we got ourselves a serial killer on our hands," he giggled. "Buzz, that's not fucking funny," Crackle yelled at the floating bee. "We have to figure out who did this." "Can we make sure he's really dead?" Snap inquired. "I mean, we don't know for sure, do we?" "I don't think he's alive." Toucan Sam flew over the pool to examine the corpse from above. "He's not breathing." He flew back to his room and retrieved a large life preserver shaped like a red Fruit Loop, then tossed it into the pool next to Lucky. But there was no movement from the leprechaun. "Come on, Lucky." The body still did not stir. "He's dead," Tony lamented. "But who would want to kill Lucky?" Count Chocula asked. "Lucky didn't have an enemy in the world." "Well, that's not totally true." Pop shook his head. "I can think of a few people who would have wanted to do away with Lucky." "Like who?" Frankenberry asked as he retrieved a pool skimmer and attempted to push Lucky's body toward the side of the pool for retrieval. "Well, for starters, how about his children? Lucky had quite an estate and lots of estranged children thanks to his fondness for Irish hookers. Those kids always chasing him in the commercials? They were his own offspring. They were always after his lucky child support payments." "Yes, Lucky was loaded," Buzz blurted out. "He had it all. Cash, stocks and bonds, Bitcoin and doubloons, pots of gold, Swiss bank accounts, and real estate investment boons." "But I didn't see any kids come into this house today," Sam interjected. "Or anyone else, for that matter." He paused. "Let's face it, one of us is the killer." The rest of the mascots stood silent for a moment. Finally, Snap ventured a comment. "So, which one of us would have had a motive to kill Lucky? We were all his friends, his most trusted buddies. We've all been through thick and thin together. Whether we work for Kellogg's or General Mills, we've all had the same goal of selling the world's children onto delicious, sugary cereal, so they don't end up with that bland, nutritious oatmeal their parents want them to eat. How could any of us stoop to something like this?" "Well, there's one mascot here I think could have done this," Sam proposed. He pointed at the Frosted Flakes guru. "Tony. He's had it in for the beloved leprechaun for a long time." "Hey, I wouldn't kill anybody," Tony protested. "Oh, you wouldn't." Frankenberry sneered at the large cartoon tiger. "Like you didn't make your displeasure known about Lucky's Asian safaris that you claim are decimating your kind, especially with your criminal history." Remember all those game hunters they found outside your house? Those maulings were expunged from my record. Tony frantically tried to steer the accusations elsewhere. It was probably the toucan who did it. That's right, Buzz agreed. Remember, Sam, how you threatened Lucky on social media and you had to put out a public apology before Kellogg's would let you appear in commercials again? Sam leapt to his own defense. Well, he was nasty to me too. He said that Fruit Loops were nothing more than gay Cheerios. He should have been kicked off of Twitter too. He's guilty, Tony exclaimed as the other mascots took a harsh eye to the toucan. Tony, Pop yelled at the tiger. This isn't one of your stupid commercials. Why do you always talk like that? I had a stroke, Tony declared. This is a total witch hunt, Sam screamed. If I killed Lucky, you think I'd just leave his body in the pool for everyone to find? I'm a fucking bird. I could easily take him anywhere to dispose of the evidence. He looked around at his accusers. It was probably Chocula. Lucky had the goods on him, and the Count knew it. The crowd gasped, turning to the chocolatey vampire, who backed away slowly from all of them, except for his ward, Frankenberry. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not do anything. Lucky did not have anything on me. Oh yeah? Sam sneered at the Count. You knew that Lucky knew about your holdings in cocoa production companies operating in West Africa. Lucky knew that you were profiteering from child slave labor, using children to produce the chocolate used in your cereal. He was going to go to the papers about it, and he also knew about your little dalliances with European figures of royalty and your alleged ties to murderous East European strongmen like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. But what really made Lucky decide to come clean with everything he knew about you was a laptop he found in your castle, proving your involvement with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You, sir, have a long and very bloody history, and Lucky was about to blow it all up for the world to see. That is why you killed him. You seriously did all of that? Snap gaped at Chocula. You should take a good hard look in whatever it is you vampires use instead of a mirror. I did not kill Lucky, the Count vigorously declared. And all that stuff is also a lie. Lucky vanted to frame me because I was always his biggest competition for cereals with marshmallows shaped like weird crap in them. I think we need to examine where the three little elves stand with all this, Frankenberry said. Snap, crackle, and pop. Maybe one of you snapped, then another one of you cackled, and then the third of you popped. Okay, what's our motive? Pop asked belligerently. Lucky and us go back many years. Us little guys gotta stick together, you know? Like you never had it in for the little leprechaun who works for your rival company, Buzz buzzed. He always beat you in the little people's competitions at the breakfast conventions. Plus, his cereal always did better with children aged 6 to 18, especially in those from wealthier households. Snap sniffled. Yes, he was our whimsical little rival, but that doesn't mean any of us would kill him. If it was anybody here who did it, it was probably the pink monstrosity standing over there. Frankenberry frowned as the crowd turned in his direction. Me? Screw you, you little elf. I would never kill Lucky. Oh, yeah? Snap asserted. Like you never got into Lucky's face about all the rumors he spread about you, about the name of your cereal meaning it contained genetically modified berries. Frankenberry shook his head sadly. Yeah, I guess it did hit me below the belt when he told people that. My sales went down over 20% because of him. Also, Lucky did sleep with your wife, Chocula added. She said sex with me was like sleeping with a corpse, Frankenberry cried. Well, I can't help that. I'm made of corpses. The hell was she doing with that little Irish runt anyway? His pecker is probably the size of a matchstick. Whoa, I think we best move on, Sam suggested. Wait a minute, we never talked about Buzz. Our flying friend here had a very good motive to off our beloved leprechaun. Okay, I see where this is going, but I am not the killer, Buzz screamed. Yes, Lucky interfered with my efforts to spread awareness of the threat to honeybees. He'd go around saying horrible things about my people, that we're all dangerous, invasive species who sting people for fun. He kept showing everyone that damn Wu-Tang Clan video where the killer bees attack New York. He even tried to convince Michael Bay to produce an action-horror movie called Night of the Bumblebees, all because my cereal beats his among the 18 to 34 female demographic. That's not the only reason, Sam insisted. It's well known in the industry that Lucky also encouraged the worker bees in your hives to unionize. Apparently, work conditions at your company are so bad that many of your employees have jumped ship to work for Amazon and Walmart. I mean, God forbid you provide your employees with full dental. What the hell do my bees need dental for? Buzz countered. They don't even have teeth. Okay, enough, Crackle yelled. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's clear that almost all of us had a motive to kill Lucky, but obviously only one of us actually did it. We have to start looking for clues. We need to check any video surveillance of the pool, examine Lucky's wounds, get an autopsy done, anything that might clue us in on how and when he died, and who was with him when he expired. No sooner did he finish talking than all the lights went out. The courtyard area was suddenly shrouded in darkness, with none of the mascots being able to see anything, despite some of them normally having excellent night vision. Then, only moments later, the lights came back on as quickly as they turned off. Everyone shrieked in horror as they saw Crackle laying on the ground, covered in blood and not moving. "Crackle!" Snap screamed. "Who did this to you?" "The killer has struck again!" Tony exclaimed. "We have to find out who did this," Toucan yelled. "Everyone, follow my nose and stick together." Suddenly, a voice was heard from inside the house. "Ahem, everyone. If you'll turn your attention to me, I think I know the solution to this perplexing mystery." The gathering turned their heads to see the newcomer, Captain Crunch, emerge from the mansion and into the pool yard. "Captain!" Pop cheered. "What are you doing here?" "I came here earlier, saw what happened, and have been investigating the house ever since," the captain chuckled. "I've become quite adept at sleuthing ever since my court-martial from the Navy forced me into early retirement." "So, who was the killer?" Frankenberry asked. "And was it the same person who murdered Crackle just now?" Crunch took a whiff from his pipe. "Just calm down, and I will explain everything. First, here is an explanation of how it might have happened." How it might have happened. "Tony did it," the captain announced, pointing at the shocked tiger in a fit of rage. Earlier today, he and Lucky were out by the poolside bar making chit-chat, and the conversation turned to health and nutrition. Tony repeatedly mocked the idea of marshmallows being considered a breakfast food, to which Lucky stated that marshmallows may not be a nutritious food, but that Tony was an endangered species and his mother was a whore. Tony immediately and swiftly murdered Lucky, inserted a knife into the body, and threw it into the pool to cover up the telltale slash wounds, and then bribed Buzz to kill the power using his stinger so that he could make an escape under cover of darkness. But when everyone gathered at the pool instead, Buzz had to sneak away in order to cut the electricity. Tony then took advantage of the darkness to kill Crackle, before the others could start searching and find out it was him who performed the dastardly deeds. How dare you? It wasn't me, Tony exclaimed. Captain, Buzz belted out, maybe you should stop with your bullshit detective work and go back to manning those glory holes or whatever else it is you did that got you kicked out of the Navy. Captain Crunch was undeterred. Those are the facts, I'm afraid. As ugly as they may be, we have a double murderer and an accomplice amongst us right now. You both are going to jail for this, Snap cried in between shedding tears for his lost companion. The hell I am, Tony snarled as he bore his fangs belligerently. You real deed. He leapt up and pounced onto the ground, roaring and throwing his claws aggressively at the other mascots. You don't want to mess with the eye of this tiger, Buzz declared as he pointed his stinger at the crowd and prepared to dive bomb into them. 'Cause believe me, you won't be a survivor. Well, this is all a fun little romp, Captain Crunch announced just as the fracas was about to go into full drive. But it isn't actually how it happened. How about this? How about this? Toucan Sam is the culprit, Captain Crunch proclaimed once the mascots were all at his attention again. Lucky was about to publish a memoir detailing Sam's troubled history as a cocaine addict. Sam was afraid the revelation would cause parents to boycott Fruit Loops and tank sales of his product. So he waited until Lucky was alone in the pool yard, then pecked him to death with that long, fruity beak of his. The rest of the mascots were shocked, but Sam did not attempt to deny the accusation. Well, yes, Lucky did meet his end with me, but aren't you forgetting about your little part in this, oh Captain, my Captain? When Captain Crunch did not respond, Sam was quick to continue. When Captain Crunch arrived at the scene, I knew he would figure things out. So, I blackmailed him into covering up this crime by threatening to reveal to everyone his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So while we were all arguing back here, Crunch cut the power so that I could kill Crackle and take the heat off of myself for long enough to smuggle Lucky's body away from the house. But guess what, Captain? Our deal is off. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself in this manner, and now we're both fucked. I too can. That is so, Captain Crunch proclaimed. There is indeed a lesson in all this. Blackmail and hidden secrets are tempting to use, but are as dangerous to their wielders as they are to their targets. But do not despair, Toucan, for that is also not how it happened. Here is the real solution to this mystery. What really happened? No one killed Lucky, the captain announced. In the interval before his body was discovered by you all, I conducted a thorough examination. Though it may look like foul play, his death was actually caused by drowning as a result of acute alcohol poisoning, brought about by his ethnicity, as well as his despondency over losing yet another child paternity case, this time to a Brooklyn mother of 4. The rest of the serial mascots murmured. But then why was the body still in the pool, with the knife in his back, when we found him? Frankenberry asked. Suddenly Crackle rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he laughed. Thank the captain's cunning for that one. He cackled as Captain Crunch glared at him with eyes wide open. Crackle, what the hell, man? You totally stuck the knife in my back. Give it a rest, Cap. You did that yourself. Crackle started licking up the ketchup he had covered himself with as part of the ruse. After the autopsy, Captain Crunch put the knife in Lucky's back and threw it into the pool to make the scene look like murder, sullying the reputation of the other serial mascots enough to make people forget about his court-martial, which was hurting sales of Crunch Berries. I was in on the scheme as well, because he promised to help me convince the bigwigs at Kellogg's to bring back Rice Krispie Treats cereal, which we all know was the bomb. So I faked my death in order to make it look like a double homicide and allow Captain to declare himself a hero for solving the mystery. Plus, it would have allowed me to cash in on a very lucrative life insurance policy once I resurfaced under the brand name Rice Titties, the world's first pornographic cereal. Then why did you just blow it all right now? The captain seethed. You and I were gonna be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I had second thoughts lying down here just now. I realized that no one really wants boobs in their breakfast cereal. Crackle shrugged. So sue me. The rest of the mascots simply stood in silence for a moment. Captain Crunch decided to slip away quietly, to which no one else took notice. As the evening turned into full-on nighttime, they still stood in the pool yard without making a sound. Well, Buzz finally said, anyone want to go over to the Trix Rabbit's house? He texted me that he just made some brownies that are very much not for kids. The corpse in the city. The car comes to a halt at the far edge of the car park behind the bank. Tom sits quietly for a moment, as if in a trance, eyes forward. Only his left arm moves as he pulls on the handbrake. His eyes drop, focusing on his finger, pressing the button to release the boot lid. Slowly, he turns his head and glares. Are you going to help me or not? Jim lets out a puff of breath, leans his elbow on the car door, and stands up. His shoes crunch on the dark gravel. The car park is deserted. With wide eyes scanning the area, he moves to the rear of the car and begins wrestling with the wheelchair. This thing's worse than a deck chair. Jim whacks the wheelchair onto the ground and rubs his hands across the seat. As he finally gets it unraveled and stable, Tom opens the rear passenger side door and unclips the seat belt that is holding his Uncle Charlie upright. There is now an urgency in his manner. His breath comes in short, sharp bursts as he scurries round the back of the car, slams the boot shut, and then crawls along the back seat toward Uncle Charlie. Line the chair up, Jim. You pull and I'll shove. Tom places one palm on Uncle Charlie's shoulder, one on his hip, groans and pushes. Jim tugs on a resistant arm and leg. Eventually, Uncle Charlie lands with a flop on the seat of the wheelchair. Jim tugs at the black overcoat to straighten him up, tucks in his arms, and lifts his feet onto the footrest. The sound of 4 doors and the boot closing echoes around the vacant car park and surrounding tall buildings. Yellow lights flash, showing the car is now securely locked. Standing back, Tom inspects his Uncle Charlie. What does he look like? Dead, says Jim. Pull his hat down over his face a bit more. Jim grabs the rim of the dark brown trilby and forces it over Charlie's head, then tilts it forward, covering Charlie's eyes. Tom takes another look and nods his approval. Gathering the strap from the back of the footrest, he buckles in his uncle's legs and then wraps a green tartan blanket tightly around them. He places a second blanket across his uncle's lap, covering his uncle's hands, and tucks that securely in down the sides. He straightens his back and breathes out a satisfactory sigh. That'll do. I'm not happy doing this, says Jim. Tom's head spins round. What? I'm not happy. Well, you're a bit late telling me that. If you want some of the money, then you'd better start feeling happy right now. Jim mumbles under his breath, snatches the handles of the wheelchair, and begins pushing it across the loose tarmac of the car park toward the exit. His breathing becomes labored as the wheels spin in every direction. Charlie's head bobs up and down, loosening the trilby. Tom reaches over to straighten it out as Jim marches onwards toward the smooth pavement and the bank entrance. I'll do all the talking. You just agree with me if they say anything to you. The blood drains from Jim's face. He says nothing. The two men push the wheelchair into the bank and join the queue. Jim hums to himself. Tom prods him. Jim stops humming. Tom fiddles with his Uncle Charlie's hat and the buttons of his overcoat. Are you all right there, Charlie? Won't be long now, and we can get you home for a nice cuppa. Jim stares at Tom in disbelief. Tom kicks Jim in the shins. Ouch. Next. The cashier's voice booms across the interior of the bank. Can we withdraw some money for my Uncle Charlie, please? Tom points to Uncle Charlie in the wheelchair as he hands over the slip of paper. Is he all right? Says the cashier. He's had a stroke. Sorry to hear that. It's a lot of money. We don't normally deal in such vast sums. He's going into a home tomorrow, and he needs the money to buy bits and pieces. You know what it's like. The care homes take all your dosh. I do indeed. The cashier smiles. If you'd care to wait, I'll sort this out for you. I see your uncle has already signed the slip. Well done, Uncle Charlie. Tom bends over the wheelchair and pats the knees covered by the blanket. Charlie does not move. The cashier returns, stamps 3 sheets of paper, smiles, and hands over a large envelope full of notes through the slit underneath the protective glass. Next. Come on, Jim. Let's get out of here. Tom grabs the handles of the wheelchair, spins it round, and heads for the exit. Jim scuttles along behind as Tom races along the pavement back toward the car park. Tom turns the wheelchair round, tips it up onto the 2 back wheels, and drags it across the undulating ground. We did it, Jim. We did it. Tom lets out a muffled laugh as he squeezes Jim's biceps. Now, let's get the bastard back in the car. Tom checks the car park for pedestrians, then grabs the shoulders of his uncle. Jim unbuckles the legs and takes hold of the ankles. Between them, the 2 men heave the motionless mass into the car and slide it along the back seat. Jim spreads the 2 blankets on top and throws the wheelchair into the boot, then sinks into the passenger seat. The engine revs as Tom's white knuckles grip the steering wheel. The car speeds out the exit as the spinning tires kick up black tarmac. What are you going to do with Uncle Charlie? Says Jim. We've got to put him where they can't find him. There's a skip over there. Jim pointed. Don't be daft. What about one of those giant green bins? There's one outside the Dog and Badger. Are you mad? We can't just dump him anywhere. The police will find him. It's got to be somewhere. No one knows. We're going back to my place now. and we'll get rid of the knobhead later tonight. We've got to do it soon, before he turns black and smells. Tom stops the car in front of the garage, while Jim jumps out and opens the doors. The car shunts forward. Tom switches off the engine and gets out. He helps Jim secure the garage doors, and then they both go into the house. Jim sinks into the nearest armchair and immediately falls asleep. Tom races upstairs and jumps in the shower. He looks at the clock. They've got to be on the move before midnight. Tom carries the 2 suitcases downstairs and places them by the front door. He nudges Jim awake. In whispers, he tells Jim to hurry and organize himself, as they must deal with Uncle Charlie on the way to the airport. Jim rubs his eyes, goes into the kitchen, drinks a glass of water, grabs a biscuit, and then goes into the downstairs toilet. When he comes out, Tom tells him to take the 2 suitcases and put them in the back of the car, and not to forget the coil of rope that is hanging on a hook just inside the garage door. Jim puts the 2 suitcases and the coil of rope in the car. Tom starts the engine and backs out. He stops the car in the driveway, gets out, and checks the front door and closes the garage doors. Where are we going, Tom? To that new industrial estate they're building on the outskirts of the city. It's on the way to the airport. They arrive at the new industrial estate, and Tom parks in a mud-filled lay-by near some railings at the end of the no-through road. Get the rope and tie it tight round that shithead's chest. Make sure you go under his arms with it. Jim takes hold of the rope, pushes it under Charlie's back, and ties it in a tight knot over his chest. Tom takes a jemmy from the boot of the car and lifts a manhole cover and drags it to one side, close to the railings. Tom grabs the rope and lugs Charlie out of the car. Charlie hits the ground with a loud thud. Tom and Jim take an in-breath and look around. Silence. Tom continues dragging Charlie across the mud to the waiting hole. Now you help me lower him in. Slowly, they eke out the rope and lower Charlie into the hole. Then secure the end of the rope onto a girder near the top and replace the cover. Will he be all right? Says Jim. What do you think? Says Tom. What'll I do with the blankets and the wheelchair? Says Jim. Tom points to some bushes behind the car. Throw them over there. Jim takes the blankets and slings them over the bushes, and then heaves the wheelchair in the same direction. Come on, Jim. We've got an hour's drive to the airport yet. Tom sits back in the seat on the airplane and sips his red wine. Jim's head falls forward, and loud snoring pours forth from it. Tom and Jim pull up a stool at the beach bar, their favorite haunt from previous Spanish excursions. Relaxed and smiling, they order a beer and proceed to quench their thirst for the high life. A heavy hand on their shoulder makes them jump as the tanned, bulky torso of a man stands between them. Don't normally see you 2 idiots here this time of year. Tom flops his head forward, clearly relieved to see it's a friendly face. Hi, Jack. No, you're right. Just visiting for a bit. And where's Charlie? The old bugger hasn't snuffed it, has he? Tom coughs. Jim swallows hard. No, he's fine. Didn't want to come. We've left him hanging around back home. Sins and sinners. Secrets carry weight, like lead. Iris inhaled the pleasant air, which was ripe with the dewy petrichor of the post-rain evening. A cool breeze ruffled the leaves of nearby lofty mango trees, all of which were well endowed with succulent yellow mangoes. The sky was shades of pretty pink and purple pastels, making her way down the narrow path between the tall trees. She recollected her memories with Dante, Isabel, Rhett, and Jax, running along the shore, pushing each other in the sea, and dreaming about sailing the world one day. They would stand and watch the sea crash onto the shore for hours, and it'd still never be enough. She remembered standing on the cliff with her friends and taking in the salty sea breeze. When the sun would set, the vast body of water would reflect the warm colors of the endless sky, and there hadn't ever been a more beautiful sight. She'd gaze at it for hours, fantasizing about unending aspirations and dreams. Iris traced the carvings on the trees she used to very much enjoy making, with scraps of metal and pieces of wood she mysteriously found every day. She suspected it was Jax, always doing these little things for her that could brighten her day. He could rarely say no to her, which led to them being part of quite questionable activities. She'd once said that she wanted to visit the yearly carnival on her birthday, and the next day she found the gleaming golden entry tickets of the carnival on her bed. She didn't really question where he got the tickets from, since they cost a lot, and he wasn't from a rich family. But she did remember him mentioning a friend who owed him a favor. Isabella and Rhett had been so jealous that day. Iris giggled, recalling the look on their faces. As she ventured further on the narrow path between the tall trees, the pastel-colored sky started to fade away into the dark shadows, from dusty lilac to indigo, and from indigo to inky black. A cool breeze blew, ruffling the leaves of the nearby mango trees, which were swaying to the notes of the wind. Iris shuddered, feeling the wind on the bare skin of her arms. She had half a mind to spend the whole night there, but even she knew it wasn't the best decision to invite the dangers lurking in the dark. Too lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice where she was keeping her foot. Instead of stepping on the hard rocks and stones, she stepped on the muddy soil. Her eyes went wide as she tried to grab a stray branch in hopes of regaining her balance. But down went she, and the stray branch with a thud. Dear Lord, things just can't go right for too long, is it? Iris internally screamed. Holding on to the bark of a nearby tree, she got back up on her feet with much difficulty and brushed off the dirt from her limbs. She looked up at the night sky, where millions of stars were in close clusters. But the full moon blazing in the sky was even more beautiful than the stars around. She smiled as she thought of the days she and her friends used to gaze at the moon together and talk about a fictional world that was everyone's personal paradise. Sadly, growing up had burst her bubble of believing that she could ever live in a place where the sky met the seas. With a sigh, she looked at the rich brown soil, padding around to look for her phone. Walking around in the mud, leaving her footprints behind, she heard a satisfying crunch. A shiver ran down her spine, and she visibly shuddered. Believing that the sound was of her own footstep, Iris took a step backward and crouched down. She started digging around in that area, throwing away the twigs, leaves, and lumps of soil she came across till she felt something papery. Scrunching her brows, she pulled up the small piece of paper from the ground and held it in her hands. The paper was tattered and torn from the edges and dust-laden with a tint of yellowish tan. She blew air onto it and wiped off the remaining dirt on her white blouse, leaving behind an unlovely stain. It's not like it is clean anymore, to begin with, Iris huffed. Squinting her eyes and looking closely at the paper, she realized it was a photograph of a younger version of Rhett, Jax, Isabella, and herself. Huge grins showing their crooked teeth and resting their arms on each other's necks. Those wonderful memories came rushing back to her. But the small smile on her face vanished as she remembered how her wonderful childhood had a terrible turn of events. Chartusa. Rhett had always been the golden child in their circle. However, he did have a mean streak to him. Envy rolled off him whenever someone else outdid him. Over the years, harmless cursing turned into aggressive shoving, pushing, and malevolent acts driven by hostility. He was at the point where he used to be jealous even when Jax, Isabella, and Iris used to hang out in pairs sometimes. Isabella called it a phase of extreme insecurity. Perhaps he felt that his friends wouldn't want to hang out with him if he wasn't the best. Perhaps he believed the quote, "Either you're something or you are nothing at all," a bit too much. Nonetheless, whatever it wasn't going to end well for him if he didn't change his unpleasant behavior. She'd contemplated on staying away from Rhett, but Isabella told her that they wouldn't want his situation to worsen. She had reluctantly agreed. After a few days, Rhett's birthday arrived. Isabella had decided to throw him a surprise party that would cheer him up. Iris and Jax helped her decorate, and all of them awaited Rhett's grand arrival. Grand was an understatement. Rhett had arrived, reeking of strong alcohol, ignoring the presence of Isabella and Iris. He headed straight towards Jax and held him by his collar. his lips curled in disgust as he uttered some unmentionable words. Processing the enormity of what just happened, the girls ran towards Rhett to pull him away from Jax. But Rhett already managed to land a punch on the poor guy's face, escaping the grip of Isabella and Iris. He kept on punching Jax till his knuckles were bloody. Horrified, Iris grabbed the nearest object which she could find, which turned out to be an iron-made decor, and slammed it against Rhett's head. Ceasing his torture on Jax, he brought his hand towards his bleeding head and caught a few drops of blood on his fingertips. He felt lightheaded as black spots started appearing in front of his eyes. In the cold silence that followed, all of them could almost hear Rhett's last heartbeats as he closed his eyes, took his final breath, and fell on the floor with a loud thud. "He's gone." Isabella broke the silence, her eyes void of any emotion. "I'm sure he's in a better place now." Isabella continued, after no one spoke a word. "What have I done?" whispered Iris, tears threatening to come out of her eyes. It still seemed unreal. "You did what was right. You ended his reign of terror. Best he be dead than alive," Jax said, anger evident in his tone as he looked at the ghoulish body of his once best friend. "Why did he do that to you? Did something happen between you two?" Iris asked Jax. Not receiving a response, she prompted again. "Answer me, Jax. I can't live with the guilt, but at least I'll die peacefully, knowing that what I've done was for the right reason." Did he need a reason any longer to punch the shit out of his friends? Said Jax. "What happened between you two?" she asked for the second time. "Stop asking that question again and again," Jax said, his teeth grinding together. "Why? Don't you realize what has just happened? How can you be so... Iris was at a loss for words. "You know that's a bloody problem of yours. All you and your selfish nature do is present yourself as the victim. Stop making everything about you, Iris. Stop pressuring me. And it's you who has killed him, not us." Oh, so I should have let him beat you to death, is it?" "That would have been better than this," said Jax, his eyes icy as he stomped away, as if her soul could bleed an ocean through the eyes. That was the enormity of Iris's sobbing. Isabella hugged her, slowly rocking her body as if she was a little child. "Iris, he didn't mean any of that. He is just upset. Anyone would have felt that way, I'm sure. What you did, it wasn't wrong. It was inevitable. You freed him from the evil inside," consoled Isabella, who had been quiet all this long. "How do you even understand 1% of what we're feeling anyway? You didn't do any of this." Iris laughed humorlessly. "Rhett was the closest to you than any of us. Didn't you consider him your friend? Don't you feel the least sad about it? You don't seem to be grieving at all. Just because I don't express it does not mean I don't feel it. And Rhett was as much of a friend to me as he was to the rest of us? Would you rather he attain peace through death, or rather he continue inflicting violence and chaos on us? Iris didn't say anything afterward. The weight of the guilt was heavy. Despair was a crushing force on her chest, constricting her breath and coloring the world around her. Black as she too was slowly engulfed by the darkness.
Transfer.
That is exactly how a tragedy like theirs breaks one's heart, making one believe that the ending might still be happy until the very last minutes. Iris flipped the photograph, returning to the present day, and read the words she had written a long time ago. Which of us could say we were more sinned against than sinning? Rainer Kelly's murder soulmate. People are fools. This was a thought he'd held on to since he was a boy, and it had held true for his entire life till that point, even as Rainer drove on the roads of his favorite mountain range. He could only think back to the sorts who proved it to him, those sorts of people he couldn't even be angry at, the kind of idiots that got themselves lost in his favorite places. It wasn't as if he cared for any particular demographic. He liked to hurt them more if they were pretty, more so if they were tame. But he was always one for opportunity. That might have been how he managed his body count. Serial killers without a known type are harder to catch, as far as he'd heard. Though, considering how high the body counts were for easier cases, he had his reservations. It could have been how he killed. While he wasn't exactly messy, he didn't try to be fancy with his targets. He'd done it before. Long, drawn moments with strangers in discreet, abandoned places. But when all was said and done, he was careful. That, and he was a fairly big guy. He was a hard man to escape, made his marks all the more foolish for trusting him. It wasn't all that late when he happened upon his next mark. A young man, inching to it, really, with a lovely mop of hair just by the side of the road. "Hello, sir. I kinda sprained my ankle. Could you drive me to a gas station or something?" the kid asked softly. He looked embarrassed by the entire situation. Rainer liked that, so he opened his passenger door for him. The kid was asking, after all. He watched as the kid arranged himself on the passenger side, careful to buckle himself in. The kid seemed a mite more cautious now, considering his ankle. Rainer started after that, taking his merry time since the kid wasn't worrying directions. "So, what had you so far out?" Rainer asked with a sideways glance. The kid had been looking out the window, contemplating something, before glancing over to him. "Oh, nothing much, just the scenery," the boy said. "Is it all right if I do some writing here?" "I don't exactly have a charging set up," Rainer said, still playing the Samaritan. The kid took out a small journal. "Sorry to disappoint. I'm a bit old school," he said, trying to look cool. He kinda did if Rainer were at all honest. Rainer could have driven with his eyes closed, but he still only looked over occasionally, seeing the kid scribble away on a relatively clean page in his book. "So, what do you like to write about?" "Bodies, "Oh, what kind of bodies?" he asked innocuously. "Anybody, anything." "Oh," he said, hoping for something more specific. It was well enough that the kid was mostly quiet after that. Raynor wasn't so over-curious of this next body. Couldn't be that clever this far out. Didn't stop him from being a bit disappointed with the answer, what they were, rather than the state they were in. He was still a bit mesmerized with the kid, scratching away on a half-empty journal he was never gonna fill. He wondered, like any man oughta, how the kid managed to see anything past his fringe. But it seemed weird to impose on something like that. That mop would be safe enough to cut when the kid was dead, if he was really in the mood for a trophy. Beyond that, it was the kinda night he wanted to take slowly. The kid was marked for it. Raynor liked to take it slow sometimes. "I still gotta wonder what got you out so late." "I thought I told you." "Oh, whatever," the kid whispered, before asking, "Is it all right to say I've got terrible friends?" "Well, hey, we've all been in bad crowds before," Raynor stated. He liked getting him out of the shell before the fun. "Yeah." Raynor couldn't see where the kid was looking. "I don't think I caught your name." "No, you didn't." "Be fair, I didn't catch yours either." "Ah, I'm Callum." "Let me guess. Your mom had a thing for soap operas?" "No, saints, actually," the kid corrected with a laugh. "My mom had a thing for cryptids." Raynor paused at the non sequitur, thinking over what to say. He could be honest, tell the kid his name, hear that begging catch on his throat later. Or he could lie, make him guess. "It won't matter if I don't know your real name, you know," the kid said, catching his apprehension. Raynor stopped to think about where they were, where the closest safe house was, before saying, "No, I was just surprised. I'm Raynor Kelly." Because he liked the kid's voice. The kid was quiet after that, the only noise from the passenger side being the press of pencil to paper, the sound of a zipper. Then, as if struck by something, he felt a sharp presence through his leg, reacting with a hit to the face, which knocked the kid out. Without much thought as to the proper thing to do, Raynor pulled the knife out. Raynor felt his own hot blood flow from his thigh, and all he could think was, "The little maniac stabbed me." He looked down at his leg, realizing that the kid, with all the luck, nicked something proper. He stole the kid's belt, since he was still out, and made a tourniquet. Frazzled by the entire ordeal, he decided to push the kid out the passenger side and step it to the nearest hospital. A night held up in the emergency room was an interesting addition to his night, just as the injury to his femoral artery was. It was a lucky break not dying from it, but the kid was still out there. He'd done something foolish, and while Raynor wasn't especially scared of getting caught, he didn't like being blindsided like that. It would be a while after that before he'd think of it again. When he cleaned out his car, Raynor, having killed on the go before, knew that anything could drop from a body. Licenses, gum, IDs, and phones were some of the most incriminating. So he really couldn't afford to keep a dirty car. That's when he found the journal, the last thing the kid dropped before trying to get the drop on him. It was a small, leather-bound notebook, and while at once familiar in the light of day, he could see the character of its use. Kid was careful closing it before pulling that nonsense, and while his car had been a mess for a while, the pages were mostly clean. He flipped through, looking for IDs that might incriminate, and when he couldn't find any, he thought to throw it away. Even without something concrete, the book was filled with the kid's writings, and being by hand, his composition and identity could be ascertained. It was the kinda circumstantial evidence detectives and juries ate up. With the car no longer in disarray, he could throw it out, forget about the one night where the tables almost turned. Altogether again, he thought of the journal, of his hands and head. This was all he was gonna have of that. And for once, amongst the dark thoughts and bad memories, he wanted to keep it. It was only then did he read it, page upon page of poetry. And though it was the simplest thing it could be, he was infatuated with it. The first page, dated a decade before, I am beauty. I am soft, a crooked rumble to strange human love. She wonders fondly, where are you, dear? While I am dry and rotting here, I am claws. I am fear, a hissing mess to his cruel intent. I am flesh. I am bones. The kid was killing cats back then, writing poetry about it even. Raynor was taken back to his first experiments, neighborhood pets, and the like he dispatched out of curiosity. Though the kid never wrote his age or full name in any of them, he could tell that it was quite a bit more than poetry. It was something he'd never thought to do. Write about them with this intense distance. Some were short and recent. I am small. I am buzzing. My life is sweet. My stripes are fuzzy. Inside, I'm soft. My stingers not. None are things the dead can flaunt. Before he knew it, he felt familiar with the kid, like he was more than a liability, as close as a journal scratched halfway through. It really was anything, anybody, to him. I am lovely. I am strong. My tendons were cut. My fat is gone, lost beneath 2 or 3 feet. There are no feelings the dead get to keep. Raynor thinks, reading through Callum's poetry book, about that night and how it went. Every little lie that he didn't bother telling. How ready he was after saying his name. He wonders, what'll I do when I'm on the prowl again? Hungry for new pretty faces. How long before he thinks about the kid as just a liability again, and not the one that got away? Unoccupied guest rooms were always hiding things. No one starts out wanting a guest room. It's usually an office first, but then you got fired and can't look at it anymore, so you throw a bed in it that you'll never sleep in. Sometimes it's a kid's room, but they've moved out into a college dorm room. It used to be storage, but then the divorce happened, leaving it depressingly empty. A studio for recording music, but the bass player was in a car accident, and the band broke up. Guest rooms are rarely ever intentional. It's more of a ritual, something society has deemed necessary. The presumption that someone wants to stay with you and your new husband. The poor friend grits their teeth, trying to pretend they can't hear you having sex, trying to make the stiff pillows into something they actually want to lay on, trying to breathe through the Yankee Candle Vanilla Wafer air freshener that's plugged into the wall. The window sticks after an inch, and they can't get it up all the way. They unplug it after everyone is asleep. But the smell has been cloistered in the room for so long that it will never smell like anything else. They put the pillow on top of their face and try to sleep. I stood in the doorway to this guest room without entering it. Untouched rooms give you answers. They offer secrets. This one had last been occupied by a dead girl lying face down in a pool of blood. I found out about the case through the police. That never happened. We didn't get along. Yeah? I barked into phone. A landline I had installed myself. Cell phones bothered me. Is this Alma? It was Detective Herbert Ross. He knew it was me. What did you want? I said, trapping the phone between my ear and shoulder as I took a kettle of hot water off the stove and poured it in my favorite chipped mug with my favorite raspberry tea. If this was about the parking tickets I'd never paid, I still wasn't going to pay them. If this was to call me in about the robbery I solved before them, I wasn't going to tell them how I did it. A girl's dead. I set the kettle down a little too hard. Hot water sloshed around inside. I stared at the swirling steam coming up from the cup. I wouldn't be able to drink it now, and I frowned. The cops never called for my help. I usually embarrassed them by figuring their cases out for them. As a PI, it was rare to get a call like this. You need me? Yeah. Can you come? I hesitated for only a moment. Yeah. What's the address? 325 111th Ave, Blaine. I'll be there in half an hour. I hung up and reached for the tea, hoping I could snag one sip. Burnt tongue be damned. The tea bag had broken. Blaine was a little forgotten neighborhood, 30 minutes from Minneapolis, where I lived. The town used to be nice and neighborly, where kids biked until dark and people shoveled driveways for the elderly. Now, it was dirty. Every house had this gray dinginess to it, like everyone had collectively decided 1 year to stop taking care of things. Lawns were overgrown. Cars were rusting away. Big lilac bushes and weeping willows were being taken out or cut down. It was like an anti-homeowners association, uglifying until everything was up to code. I showed up to the house where only one police car remained. There was yellow tape in front of the door. A crowd of people stood a few feet away, muttering. I looked the crowd over quickly, but no one stood out. I lifted the tape and went into the house. Herbert was standing right inside, apparently waiting for me. Body has already been taken. He grunted. That's fine. I didn't get much from dead bodies. I knew Herbert would tell me anything I needed to know because he had called me. Still, this was awkward. We both were uncomfortable, and it was obvious by how we refused to make eye contact, our hands shoved in our pockets. Husband found her face down in the guest room, stabbed multiple times, said the doors were all locked, no sign of forced entry. You ask the neighbors if anyone was skulking around? Herbert nodded. Nothing out of the ordinary. Seems like everyone keeps to themselves. What did she do? Who? The victim. What did she do for work? Oh, her name's Noelle Sharp. The writer? I asked, bewildered. She was known for gritty romance novels, turned deadly. Not my thing, but I knew her name. Yeah, I didn't know she lived here. He nodded again. They moved here a few years ago. Geez, why? Herbert shrugged. Husband, name Magnus, works for a painting company. She seems to make more dough. Where is he? Already down at the station. Guy's pretty numb. Won't say much. Yeah, well, his wife was murdered. I wondered if Magnus had convinced Noelle to move here. If he had done that thing that men do when they feel like their wife, or any woman, really, was doing better than them. So he tried to put her in a box, make her talents and abilities small and manageable, easy to swallow. How many shouting matches had they been through before Noelle had conceded to move into this shit box in the middle of Shitsville? Can I have a few minutes? I asked. Herbert nodded. I surveyed the entrance area. Stairs right in front of us, leading down into a dark, wet-smelling basement. A tiny hall leading into a kitchen. Living room to the left, dining room to the right. I gave the first floor a once-over. Dirty dishes in the sink. Magazines on the coffee table. The trash was empty. No bag. I went up the stairs and found the main bedroom, bathroom, and the guest room. In the middle of the guest room was a huge blood stain. It was flecked around the room, on the walls, on the bed. The stain was dark against the gray of the carpet. I surveyed the room. One bed, one desk with a small lamp and wooden chair, one plush armchair near the window, overhead light, fixture, fan. There was a closet and a nearly empty bookcase, short and pudgy. Maybe something that one of them had been dragging around for years, couldn't bear to get rid of. Some furniture held on to you. I walked in and thought about the room. The carpet was gray, the walls were white, but it was an off-white. It was like the white had been darkened by something. I sat down in the armchair and looked around, pretended I was staying there. I went over and turned the light on. The fan spun slowly above me. I sat back down in the armchair and looked some more. I realized it had been blue. The walls had been blue, but they had been poorly painted over, once, in a hurry. I got up from the chair and went over to the closet. Inside, there was a plastic bin full of wrapping paper. There was a broken vacuum A box of empty bags to be used for gifts, and a stack of towels and blankets for guests. I reached out and touched the unused things, linens that had never been unfolded. So, no guests, or maybe guests slept on the couch. And this room, like many guest rooms, was useless. I leant down at the carpet in the closet. I took a small pair of scissors I kept on me and cut off some of the carpet threads, slipping them in my pocket. I sat on the bed, and it dipped, like it was trying to swallow me. The room smelt of dust, and the duvet was covered in butterflies. I lay down and stared up at the ceiling. What was missing in this room? And then I bolted upright and stared at the blank walls and realized there was less dust in a few places. Sections where things had been removed. Pictures. There were no pictures. Herbert was standing outside, trying to get the crowd to leave. I stormed out. "Are you sure this wasn't a robbery?" I asked. Hebert looked over his shoulder, annoyance on his face at my outburst. It made the dispersing crowd turn, new interest compelling them to stay. "Nothing has been taken." "How do you know?" I asked. Husband confirmed. "You don't think, just maybe, he's a little fragile at the moment?" Herbert shrugged. "I'll have him do another walkthrough." I told him I was going to need to come back to the house again. I needed to think. He told me to call him first, before he did. We both knew I wouldn't. But I looked up Noel Sharp on the internet. I found relatives and close friends, and I called and talked to them. Everyone had lovely things to say. I asked about her writing and her hobbies. When I brought up the husband, people also had nothing but good things to say. The mother was the only one who sputtered on and on about how that low life tricked my daughter into marrying him. Worthless career, no family money. She could have married a Rockefeller. I didn't tell her Rockefellers didn't spend time in Minnesota. I found their bank information, social media accounts, insurance. He had taken her name. Previously had been Magnus Brown. He had a brother named Leonard. I called and talked to some more people and asked if they ever had parties. Who were the best friends? Who stayed in that guest room? No one had much to say. There had been a housewarming party, but never another party after that. I called Leonard and asked him about Magnus and Noel. Leonard was still shocked about Noel's murder, kept going on and on about how Magnus adored her. Noel was such a sweet girl. She was so kind to everyone. Great cook. I never read her books, but I knew she was good. Magnus just loved her. I told him to call me if he thought of anything else. I could see from their joint bank account that there was voodoo trouble. There always was. I carefully read through credit card statements, but nothing interesting sprung out. Not even a transaction from a dirty website. I sat by the window in my apartment, smoking until daylight. I waited a few days before going back to the crime scene. I called Herbert on the way to the house. and he told me basic things that I could have guessed. Death due to blood loss, internal injuries, no fingerprints on the knife or around the house, doors locked, nothing broken. Husband staying with a friend. Husband's alibi checks out. Yeah, he was painting a town over. I have the address. I'll take it, I said. I could hear the frown over the phone. I already cleared it with the homeowner. You called me, I said with a shrug that I knew he could hear. He rattled off the address, and I wrote it on a Walgreens receipt. I stopped at a Home Depot and stood in front of the paint chip wall. I stared at the colors, the very berry purple and Derbyshire green. I took out the carpet clippings and held them up over the grays. The carpet color was rock candy. I was at a shabby, buttercup yellow, run-down house that had not been painted in a long time. An old man in an old red sweater answered the door. He was hard of hearing, and his eyes were swallowed up so far into his face that I figured he couldn't see well either. I told who I was. Alma Savage, private investigator, and asked if he had made an appointment to have his house painted. He talked about how this nice fellow had painted his house, how they had drunk beer and talked about baseball. I was confused for only a moment before a young woman with a pixie face and curly hair interrupted us. My father has Alzheimer's, she explained. The house was painted a long time ago. I asked her if either of them had talked to the police. She looked confused. The old man had been the one on the phone with Herbert. I parked in front of the Sharp house and called people again and asked them to tell me things they remembered about Noel and Magnus. Memories were precious and often wrong, but sometimes they were the only clues one had to go on. Kathy Green was Noel's best friend. She hadn't been able to talk to me the first time I called. Now she was somber, and her voice wobbled, but she talked to me. I had dinner with them every month. Magnus cooked the best meals. Magnus, I repeated. What about Noel? Nope. Noel didn't like cooking. Whenever we were alone, we always ate out. Kathy kept talking, clearly happy to have someone to talk to. They wanted kids so bad, but Noel had a miscarriage, and they never tried again. Magnus couldn't bear it. Had a vasectomy. I asked her when this happened. She said 4 or 5 years ago. I hung up and went back into the house, walking into the guest room and staring at it, realizing it was perfect size for a nursery. The schooner blue walls that had been painted over with Acacia white, the missing pictures, rock candy carpet. I lay on the couch in the living room and determined it was too uncomfortable for someone to sleep on overnight. No one stayed with the Sharps. I called Herbert, still lying on the lumpy couch. I need you to check something for me. Alma? Yes. I need you to tell me if she was pregnant. Noel? Yes. I'll call you back. Chad. I went into the main bedroom and looked over the dresser, where receipts and change and dollar bills and earrings lay. I looked in their closet at all of Noelle's comfortable writing clothes and Magnus's paint-covered clothes. I found photo albums and thumbed through them. Nothing but happy smiles. I looked for medication in the bathroom. Nothing. I dug into drawers and looked through cabinets. Finally, in the garage, I found boxes, unlabeled. I knew it was what I was looking for. I opened them. There were 7 bikes, none matching, all different sizes. Each one had bright pink or bright blue toys, blankets, onesies, pacifiers. Each one contained a cross-stitched rectangle, homemade, Flora Sharp, Theodore Sharp, Maisie, Cooper, Rachel, Kevin. There were photos of the finished rooms, walls different each time. Pinks named Azalea, Flower, Teaberry. Blues named Gentle Aquamarine and Breathtaking. I looked down at the boxes, at all the attempts, all the miscarriages. Kathy Green didn't know about this. Her best friend status was weak, watered down because Noelle was too broken or embarrassed or just didn't think it was anyone's business. No one slept on the couch. No one slept in the guest room. I surveyed the rest of the garage and saw some large, framed photos shoved in the corner behind a lawnmower that was covered with a tarp. I went over and pushed the lawnmower away. They were prints of Noelle's book covers, the missing pictures, and there was a bloody thumbprint on the edge of one, her 3rd book, Dangerous Illusion. My phone rang. I answered it, hands shaking. Was she? I asked, throat dry. She was pregnant. Fuck, I muttered. What? Magnus had a vasectomy a few years ago. We'll confirm that on our end. And if you do? I asked. We both knew the answer. If he'd had the operation, it meant Noelle had cheated. It was motive? I found Leonard's apartment the next day. When he opened the door, he was in a wrinkled t-shirt and boxers. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. His eyes were red, and his hair was unkempt. I told him who I was, and he let me in. He gave me a beer. It was warm. I chugged half of it in one gulp. When I swallowed, I asked, "So how long were you sleeping with her?" Leonard pretended to look confused. I waited. Then, after 4.5 minutes of silence, he put his face in his hands and started crying. I loved her so much. Magnus was always complaining, and she would come over and vent, and we'd drink, and we never meant to. Noelle was pregnant, I told him. His teary eyes grew smaller, beadier. Noelle had found out that day. I pushed on. She left the pregnancy test in the trash, and Magnus found it. You know he had a vasectomy. I didn't wait for him to confirm. Noelle was in the guest room, looking at the nursery she never got, hoping it would work this time. It could be you. And Magnus found her, killed her, and took down the photos of her books. Couldn't bear to see them. All her accomplishments. She had money. Her name meant something. And now his own brother was fucking his wife. How did you know that? Magnus isn't staying with you. He's staying with a friend. He hates you. No. He choked out, shaking his head, like that would shake the words out. She only cooked for you. When she came over here to vent and drink and fuck, she'd cook for you. She never did that with him. What do I do? He asked, drowning in how much he hated himself. I looked around the drab apartment before turning my eyes back to him, shrugging. Ever thought about painting the place? The voice thief. Tom, have you ever been in that situation when you are in a serious emergency, but you can't tell anyone? Well, if you have, you might have a similar story to mine. It all happened last year. I was at McDonald's for my best friend's birthday party when it happened. I was just walking around when a man in a Ronald McDonald costume walked past me. He looked at me and said, "Come here, child." Okay. That was a bit weird, and I was now questioning if this really was a man in a suit. So I kept my distance. That made him mad. I said, "Come here, child." He sneered. By this point, I was freaking out. This man was crazy. I had to warn the others. So that was when I did the only thing I could do. I screamed. That is, I tried to scream. Ronald looked at me and grinned. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked. I ran, unable to warn anyone of this monster. That was all I could do. And now, 1 year on, I still am. Okay, I know you're wondering, what on earth does that have to do with anything? Well, McDonald's is about to close down, so they're throwing a goodbye party. I'm going to go. I know, my first party in a while. There is but one reason I'm going. My voice. I need my voice back. I would give anything just to hear it again. I'm getting this Ronald McDonald guy back for what he has done. Ronald, my trap has worked. For years I have stolen the voices of children and added them to my collection. Each child has had their life ruined, and they don't have the brains to write a note to warn everyone else. But I have now become bored with my collection, and I decided, why not just capture the kids? I do have an enormous basement to put them in, and who would miss those brats anyway? My plan is simple. Capture all the kids that go to the throwaway party. Tom, the party is on. There are sales everywhere I look. Kids run around like crazy. I try not to get sidetracked by all the sales, but soon find myself in the queue. That's when I saw him, Ronald McDonald. It was time for revenge. Ronald, I can't believe how dumb this kid is. After I took his voice, he still comes to the party. Oh, well, I guess I'm in luck. So far, I have caught 30 kids, I'm going to give this one a jump scare. Tom, wait. Where on earth did that guy go? I sigh. Maybe I might see him again soon. That's when I felt a tap on my back. I turned around, and there he was, Ronald McDonald, his lips a blood-red color. "Come, child," he says. It's all a repeat of the first time we met. I forget revenge and run, and I won't stop this time. Ronald, the kid took the bait. He's running straight into my trap. Now it's time for some fun. Tom, okay. I know you're wondering how I ended up in this trap, but not even I know. I hear a creak as Ronald and McDonald enter the room. He holds my voice in one hand and a knife in the other. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked with a grin of pure evil. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I had no voice. That was when Ronald did something horrid. He killed my voice. He stabbed it. My voice screamed, and my throat went numb. My mission had failed. Ronald laughed, a wicked laugh. It was the type of laugh that freezes fire and melts ice. Then it occurred to me. I was going to die. Ronald, this kid has been an interesting type. The type that I like to turn into food. I seized him by the throat and carried him down a long passageway to the food processor. What food would I turn him into? A child nugget. Perfect. What a snack they will be. I'm drooling just thinking about it. Time to drop him in. Tom, I can't believe this. Pure cannibalism. Ronald let go. I fell down through the machine, landing in a pile of breadcrumbs. Before I could relocate, a huge roller ran over the top of me. I was knocked out cold. When I woke, I was in a freezer, marinating. Ronald McDonald sure has a bad recipe, I thought. It was cold. I was surprised I wasn't dead yet. Then, out of nowhere, a claw grabbed me and I still shudder to think about it. It dunked me in grease. The grease was boiling. And that's when I realized I was being deep fried. I could feel life draining from my body. I tried to climb out of the grease, but it was too slippery. I was going to be a snack for Ronald McDonald. By now, I was just a blob of food in the universe. My breathing slowed, and with 5 minutes left, I would be cooked. Every second became a struggle. I was dying. 1 minute left. You can do this, I told myself. 30 seconds left. You can do this, I said, between each gulp of air. 10 seconds. I gave up. The heat swallowed me up the way Ronald McDonald will when I come out of here. The truth was clear. I couldn't do this. Ronald, ding. The door creaked open and slammed down on the floor. Out came my child nuggets. I licked my lips tasty. They smell delicious. I lifted one up and took a bite. Crunchy. Soon, I have eaten them all. They should be on the menu. Oh well, I guess it's time to go upstairs. You never know who might be up there, just waiting to be taken. Justice. In a whiskey. March 21st, 1957. There is blood on the bed. His stomach ripped open, his left eye mutilated, and the side table is lying near the door frame. His wife is bawling her eyes out, and there is a half-empty bottle of whiskey under the bed. The cut on his body shows that he was attacked by a knife, and the incision is so clean, almost as if the murderer is an anatomy genius. The mouth of the body is gaping open, and his neck has purple splotches. My friend, who is an investigator, clicks photos from all angles. With each flash of the camera, I see a clue unfolding beside me. Officer Barn rushes towards me, his eyes speaking of a strange fear. He clasps my shoulder, urging me to come out of the room. I march out and stand near the doorframe, my eyes speaking instead of my tongue. "What's the matter, Barn?" I ask him, trying to hide the expression on my face. "We need to hurry. This case is a very high profile." He coughs up, interrupting himself. He's not an ordinary person. He is the son of a famous business tycoon. This case is no longer a government record. It's a public scandal. He huffs at the end. "I know he is the son of Mr. Edward, owner of the steel factory, but we cannot hurry it up, leaving clues to the rats." I breathe in with ease. We cannot delay it either. Mr. Barnes speaks up. "We need to fasten our belts and rush our brains before it goes out into the hands of the media." I nod my head and once again enter the room, observing each minute detail. I see a leaflet in the vase of flowers. I ask my assistant for gloves. I wear them and take the leaflet carefully from the flowers. It's a prescription. The ink is fading away in the water, but the logo on the paper is smudged, yet noticeable. "Sir, you can hand it over," the forensic officer says, pointing out to a plastic bag in his hands. I take the plastic bag from him and carefully put the leaflet in it. I fold the upper corner of the bag and place it on the left side of my coat pocket. "Sir, the evidence belongs in our department. I beg your pardon, but you have to hand it over to us." The forensic officer pleads with his eyes and places out his arm. "Even I have a small lab at my home. I would love to personally investigate in my space." I boldly put my statement forward. "I wish you could do that, sir. But since the case is high profile, we have to follow all the orders from our seniors and judiciary. I can't help you this time. I would love your cooperation more." I sign in defeat and take the bag from my right side of my coat and place it in his hand. He bows his head in respect and leaves the place. I go into the drawing room where the wife of the victim is present. She has a lilac handkerchief in her hands and is wearing a black dress. Her eyes are red due to the constant crying, and her cheeks are soaked in due to her tears. She's surrounded by her neighbors and friends. I tell them to depart soon, to push my investigation forward. Everybody leaves, and Catherine gathers herself, aligning her back with her body. I sit a few inches apart from her, observing her delicate little hands, which no longer has the burden of the band. Miss Catherine, sorry for your loss. I know the departure of your husband is so unexpected, and I could understand your sorrow. She sobbed a little and quivered her lips. I hope my husband gets justice, sir. That's all I want. I want the culprit dead. Her eyes blazing with anger and deep sorrow. I take her hand in mine and say to her with a coy smile, "That will soon happen, I promise you." I could feel the coldness of the plastic in our hands. A week before, I could not take my eyes away from the bruise, which was on Catherine's left elbow. The wound itself is telling the backstory of its origin. She lifts my chin, directing my eyes towards her. Her hands were cold, and her little finger was swollen. Her eyes were dull, with no light or joy. "You called me here for something?" She questions me with disgrace and disregard. "Yeah, so I am going to dive in for cooking. You know, learning a few basic skills and recipes." I laugh at my lie and take out the tray of knives. "So, what are you starting with?" Her voice is cold like ice, and her eyes tired. She has a small brown patch near her eyelid, hinting at her life. I immediately try to distract myself from the bruise by balling my fists and digging my fingernails into my palms. I think with the stomach, cleaning and cutting will be far easier from here, I say, pointing out to the featherless chicken on the table. "That's interesting. So, what help do you need from me?" Catherine asks me. "Well, I don't know about the cleaning and cutting. Like, see this butler's knives? It's too big for the work. We don't need this, but this." I point out to the medium-sized scalpel with a sharp edge. "I think this will do. Precision cut and less mess." She nods her head, and a slow smile rises across her square face. Even I think so. I loved the way she smiled, always. By the way, have you read the 10th chapter of Volume 1 of Anatomy? I ask her, with my eyes focused on the scalpel. 3 weeks earlier. I always flunked chemistry. Thanks to you, otherwise I would be a technician in a hospital. I pass a gentle smile to Catherine. I don't know about the academics' chemistry, but your reaction with women was always volatile. She taunts with me, her gentle smile. Not all, only with one. But that reaction became highly toxic for everybody. Hearing my sharp words, her smile disappeared. I hate for causing an explosion in that research. If I had focused on one chemical, then my life would not have been so volatile. Her voice sounded disapproved. I miss my compound too. I sigh with disbelief. She turns away from her face and wipes her tears. I know it's so tough for her to gather the courage daily and to chalk out the plan. I try to lighten the mood surrounding us. The movie makers are so hypocrites, I shout. What? She turns around, but does not see me in the eye. They always show that when you place the chloroform on someone's face, the person instantly passes out. But it's not true. A person at least requires 15 minutes of continuous exposure for passing out to its fullest. Movies are for entertainment, not for knowledge, we say in unison. Out-timing makes me laugh, and she laughs seeing me laugh. By the way, Catherine, I want to say you an amazing fact. Do you know, whiskey and chloroform have the same taste. She finally sees me in the eye and smiles. Now I know. And laughs like a small hyena. 4 weeks earlier, the church is calm, and the benches are clean. It's Monday, hence the absence of people seems relevant. I smell the candles burning, and could hear the faint sobbing from the room of confession. I walk towards it and open the stall. It was empty, but the nearby stall wasn't. I rotate my head around to see anyone's presence, and finally steps in. Feeling the presence of my space, the sobbing discontinued. It's the result of my sin. If I hadn't cheated the person who loved me the most and did not break his heart, this would have never happened. Her voice breaks down, and through the thin mesh, I could guess her marble hands wiping the tears away from her face. The result, or the outcome of your sin, depends on the Lord itself. It's you and me who have the final decision. I have forgiven you already. But what about the devotion and love you offer him? Is his response appropriate? Does raising hand on your wife courageous? I sigh in dismay. But what are we going to do? Do you think your plan is proper? She questions my intentions. The law won't help us. His hands are long, and their pockets are full with his money. It's not about how I feel. It's about the justice you need. I face her across the mesh, digging my fingernails in my palm. I won't lose you because of somebody's treatment. I choke down my tears. She stands across the mesh, placing her hand on it. I do the same. A month ago, sir, there is a woman. She is stating emergency and needs urgent observation. Will you come soon? The nurse hurried her sentences. Can you call another doctor? I have completed my hours. I pack my suitcase and turn to leave. She says it's matter of life and death, sir. The nurses exclaim. Okay, fine. Only 15 minutes. Then transfer her case to Dr. Edmund. I wipe the sweat on my forehead and put on my white coat. Sometimes the Hippocratic oath becomes the death of me. I go to the patient's cubicle. I am in no mood to observe the patient. I remove the board placed near the bed and read the symptoms taken by the nurse. Internal bleeding in the cervix, partially choked, bruises on hand and near the eyes, lower lip cut, fracture on the wrist. Miss, when did this happen? And how can we aid you? I reply bluntly. My energy is on brink of exhaustion and pushed to my limits. A pale, cold hand catches my wrist, and a humble voice reaches my ear. Just forgive me, will you? My ears recognize it, and when I see her face, the blood in my body stills. I catch her limp hand and shout, "Catherine!" Tears were flowing down her eyes, and her face had lost the life and sunshine she had. All she could do was clasp my hand with more force. I kiss her knuckles and run my fingers lightly on the bruises. Seeing her in this state, my mind rattles. I clench my teeth, and tears of anger rush down my cheeks. Who did this to you? I ask her, trying to mask my anger. She gathers herself, and with the last courage within her, utters, "My husband, murder at Eerie." The extreme ironing convention was infamous in Preston. For the last 8 years, extreme ironers from around the world fell upon the city. Their antics in the streets caused emergency calls for days. Ironing on top of city buses. Ironing while hang gliding over downtown. Ironing while belaying down the cupola of City Hall. Every year, there was one incident that truly left its mark on Preston. This year, the incident would be the death of Sean Morrison. I looked down at Sean's body, his face brutalized by a blunt object. In any other situation, identifying the murder weapon might have been tricky. But not here. Not at XIR Con. There was no mistaking the iron-shaped dent in the dead man's head. I had seen it before. I clenched my fists, remembering the day that my wife had been murdered 8 years ago. The image of her face haunted my nightmares. Beautiful until it had been ruined by a Bosch TDA 2650 G-Bide Quick Fill, the highest rated iron of 2012. Preston's coroner had estimated the time of death at about 2:15 a.m. The murder weapon had not been found yet, and the trail of blood leading out of Sean's hotel suite had run cold quickly. No witnesses had come forward. The extreme ironing community was notoriously tight-knit and likely to protect their own. They had done so in the past. Detective Clay, they're ready. A police officer on scene had separated the suspects, and she handed me a list of names. I squared my shoulders and got started with the interview process. Anna Kruger, the hotel manager, was already in Sean's suite, pacing around and surveying the extensive damage. Pieces of drywall and broken glass littered the carpet, and the telltale burn marks of overly hot irons defaced the furniture and carpet. I watched her until she stopped mid-pace near the end table next to the couch and knelt down. Anna stuck her arm in a hole in the wall and pulled out a Panasonic A66K automatic iron. I never would have allowed these extreme ironing United States assholes to have ex-IR con here again, if I weren't so hard up for money. At least they rented out the entire place. Anna glared at the iron-shaped hole in the drywall. They always ruin something. They leave burns and run up the electric bills, plugging in all their stupid irons. She raised her eyes to meet mine and brandished the iron. But this time, Sean went too far. When was the last time you saw him, Ms. Kruger? He came down last night, around 11, asking for more towels. She pointed at a pile of charred towels near the couch. I can see why he asked. Anna held out the Panasonic iron, her hand shaking. The temperature gauge is on the highest setting. He was burning things on purpose. If he were still alive, I'd sue him into oblivion. Miss Kruger, do check with that ironing board vendor, detective. I had to chase him out of the storage room around 2:30 this morning. Mighty suspicious, if you ask me. Errol Fleming, the owner of the Cleveland Ironing Board Company, leaned against the wall in his room. That damned Sean, he growled, German accent thick on his tongue. He ruined me. He posted negative reviews of my new ironing board design and used his extreme ironing championship fame and influence to boost them. Go on, the Cleveland steamer. It was a board made specifically for steam irons. Sean was a proponent of steam irons, but he said my board had a shitty design. His was the #1 review on Amazon. Everyone saw it. My profits tanked. No one bought. I am glad he is gone. I'm sure his negative reviews were the only reason no one bought the board. Errol's eyes widened, and he straightened his back. I am not happy he is dead. That is a terrible thing to say. I am innocent, of course. Mr. Fleming, can you tell me what you were doing in the storage closet last night? Color rose to his cheeks. I cannot say. It would ruin me. I thought your business was already ruined by Mr. Morrison. Yes, my beautiful Cleveland steamer. But I had other boards in development. What does this have to do with your excursion? Errol sucked in a breath and held it until I thought he might faint. Finally, he breathed out and answered. I was looking at the hotel's ironing boards. I frowned. I couldn't come up with any good ideas, he wailed. I was looking for inspiration. You can't tell anyone that I'm an ironing board design fraud. Errol slumped back against the wall. Gottverdammt, he whispered. Thank you for your time, Mr. Fleming. Please, wait. You should talk to the tall man with curly hair. I saw him sneaking out of Sean's room last night, after 2. Thomas Prince. The tall man with curly hair was Thomas Prince, a longtime advocate for the use of steam irons over dry irons in the extreme ironing competition world. Thomas was a prolific donor to Kickstarter campaigns for new steam iron technology, and he wielded a Rowenta DW527 Focus Excel steam iron during competitions. He looked up from the hotel bed when I walked in, eyes red and puffy. Detective, I hear you were out late. Yeah, I went to see Sean. Any particular reason? We're friends. Thomas frowned and corrected himself. Were friends, Mr. Prince. Your visit makes you the last person to see Sean alive. That doesn't mean anything. Have you talked to Noah yet? He was going to drop some major news on us tonight, and Sean got wind of it yesterday. He was so upset. What news? Sean wanted to take over Eos. He thought Noah was doing a shit job, and he's never been shy about voicing his opinion. Noah threatened him, so Sean took a swing, caught him right in the jaw. Good thing he has a weak punch. Go on. Thomas leaned back. Not much else to say. I went to Sean's room to talk him down after that. He was pretty shaken up and talking about leaving Eos completely. Noah had really gotten him riled up. I appreciate the information. In the meantime, I would like you to stay right here. Thomas shot me an annoyed look. Am I still a suspect? You were seen leaving Sean's room last night, and his body was found this morning. I'd say you're the primary suspect. I called for additional officers to watch Thomas's room, while one officer remained inside. Noah Bowers. I approached the sullen president of Extreme Ironing United States, Noah Bowers, in the hotel's business center. He looked up from his seat at a small conference table. Before I could say anything, Noah spoke. You think I did it, don't you? I didn't say that, but you know I threatened him, right? Well, he threatened me first. I didn't want him to, think I was intimidated. Noah stood up and spun one of the chairs. Look, bro, Sean was a dick, okay? That's no secret. So he wanted to oust me and, take over as president of the EIUS. That doesn't mean I killed him. I said nothing. Noah grunted and crossed his arms. If you really want to know who did it, you should talk to his fiancée, Marin, bro. She was gonna, poison him or something. Marin Knox. I visited Marin in her hotel room. She was sitting calmly on the hotel bed, watching a reality show, and she didn't bother to look up as I entered the room. I understand you found Sean this morning, Ms. Knox. Sure did. I went in to make sure he was up in time for the convention. He liked to sleep in. You had access to his room? She stared at me. Duh. We were engaged. You don't seem upset that your fiancé was murdered. Marin shrugged. I'm not. He was an abusive, cheating piece of shit, and I was going to end things tonight. But now I have to thank someone for saving me the trouble. I understand you were planning to poison Sean. Marin cocked a thin brow. Why would I poison him when I could leave him? That's why I got my own room in the first place. I was thinking of putting eye drops in his food so he'd shit his guts out. So yeah, maybe that's technically poisoning him, but he wouldn't have died or anything. It's still an actionable offense, Ms. Knox. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't do it. She paused in thought. You should talk to Eddie. I saw him arguing with Sean yesterday. It looked pretty heated, but I didn't stick around to listen. Probably something to do with steam versus dry irons again. Eddie's crazy for dry irons. Eddie Wu was doodling on hotel stationery. But he put the pen down as I walked into his room. I understand you and Mr. Morrison exchanged words yesterday. We have the same argument every time we see each other, Eddie said, sitting up a little straighter. He's always going on about steam iron superiority, but he fails to see the beauty and simplicity of a classic dry iron. When did you last see Mr. Morrison? Eddie continued, as though I hadn't spoken. Using a dry iron is an art form. He walked across the room towards an ornate case. Let me show you. That's okay, my iron, he cried out in panic. Eddie showed me the empty case. Where is it? How? Eddie sank to his knees, tears spilling from his eyes. My glorious iron. I can't believe it's gone. Mr. Wu, I don't care about your needs, detective. What about mine? My iron is missing. The perfect sole plate, unblemished by steam holes, polished to a high shine. Did you know I had a custom handle built to fit my hand perfectly? My heart skipped a beat, and an image of my wife thrust itself into my head. The iron mark on her face wasn't perfectly smooth. There were spots, steam holes, but Sean's mark had no holes. He was killed with a dry iron. Mr. Wu? I said, struggling to keep my voice even. Who else here is a dry iron aficionado? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. Eddie grinned like the Cheshire Cat. Sean Morrison. Did anyone else know? Eddie shrugged. This is a small world, detective. It's hard to hide something so scandalous. His grin faded. You should talk to Thomas. Thomas Prince. Thomas jerked up in surprise as I walked in the door. He set aside the iron he was cradling and wiped a tear from his eye. Mr. Prince, how well do you know the others at this convention? Well, me and Sean go way back, of course. Eddie's been around for a while. We don't agree on irons, but he's a nice guy. Marin came into the mix a couple years ago. Noah's been the president of EIUS for a long time, but he mostly keeps to himself. I don't know him that well. Do you know if anyone might have a motive to harm Mr. Morrison? Marin and Sean have been together for a long time, but that's been falling apart. Thomas made a face. She's a real piece of work. I wouldn't trust her with my iron under any circumstances, but I don't really know the others well enough to say. I took a deep breath. Did you know that Sean was secretly into dry irons? Thomas winced. I went to visit him after he argued with Noah. He was really stressed out. I don't think he meant to tell me, but he slipped up. He told me about his preference for dry irons. Go on. I was shocked, you know. We had spent years talking about the merits of steam irons over dry. Thomas threw his hands in the air. I mean, you can use a steam iron as a dry iron. But he just kept talking about how cool Eddie's iron was. Thomas stood. and walked to the window. I asked him if I could have his championship-winning steam iron, and I know it was kind of selfish to even ask, but it's a steam iron. He faced me, his mouth hard. If he was so into dry irons, there's no reason he needed to keep that one. I knew the answer already. He said no. Thomas hung his head. Yeah, that's when I noticed it. A plug barely poked out from under the hotel's dresser. Thomas noted my pause and followed my gaze. We lunged at the same time, but I reached the dresser first, knelt, and yanked the cord, and there it was. The Oster Heavyweight GCSTD 119 Classic, stained with what was surely the victim's blood. Eddie Wu's missing iron. I expected to fight my way out of the situation, but Thomas sat down heavily and exhaled. I didn't mean to kill him. I backed away from Thomas to the room door. Sean had Eddie's iron in his room. He was messing with it. I think he was trying to break it so Eddie wouldn't win in today's competition. Thomas groaned. And that was bad enough. If the sponsors found out, we'd lose all those investments. But when he refused to give me his steam iron, I just snapped. I stuck my head out the door and motioned for the nearest officer to assist me. Before I could even think about what I was doing, Sean was on the floor, and I was holding Eddie's iron. I brought it back here to hide it, but you see how much good that did me. Thomas looked down at his hands. I'll never iron again. The officer casually entered the room. I won't resist, he said, looking straight at me. I messed up. Mr. Prince, please remain still, the officer said gently as she bent down and handcuffed Thomas's hands behind his back. The officer led Thomas away, but the satisfaction of solving the case rang hollow in my heart. I returned to other suspects to tell them they were free to go. When I got to Marin's room, she simply nodded and started packing her things. But there was something I had to know. Did you know your boyfriend was a dry iron promoter? Marin's eyes widened. Sean's been advocating the benefits of steam irons, both in competition and in the home, for years. The slight tremble in her voice gave her away. She was hiding something. What aren't you telling me, Ms. Knox? She stared at the floor and bit her lip. Look, he'd always use a steam iron for shows and competitions because that's what people expected. He had a sponsor to please, a wealthy one, but behind closed doors, Marin took a deep, shuddering breath. Behind closed doors, we used a dry iron. She buried her face in her hands. Oh God, you can't tell anyone. His reputation would be destroyed. The sponsor would pull all their funding out of the projects he and Thomas were working on. Like what? They had an idea to improve this older model steam iron, right? To make it more efficient and easier to clean. The steam holes on that model were tough to clean, but it was otherwise a great iron. I would even use it sometimes when he wasn't at home. I liked it better than his dry iron. She laughed sadly. He would have been so mad. Marin stood up and started to pace. Anyway, he never got a new steam iron, so he always used the same one. His championship iron. It was iconic, blue and white. Have you ever seen it? Something in her voice made me uneasy. Let me show you, Marin continued. It's beautiful, Xavier. How do you know my name? She opened a decorative case near the foot of the hotel bed and pulled out an iron. My blood ran cold. It was a Bosch TDA 2650 Jeep quick fill. Marin smirked at my expression. You recognize it, don't you? Or rather, you recognize the shape of the sole plate. It was the same one that killed your wife 8 years ago. She stepped closer, her grin widening. He did it, you know? Sean killed her. She found out his secret obsession with dry irons, and he couldn't allow her to talk. I inched my hand towards my concealed pistol. Put the Bosch down, Marin. You don't have to do this. Marin raised the iron, her pupils dilated with madness. But I've always wanted to know what it felt like, what it could feel like to kill someone. She swung the iron towards my head, barely missing. I called for backup and pulled out my pistol to defend myself. I don't want to shoot you. 2 police officers swept into the room before I had to take any further actions. Marin was quickly disarmed and handcuffed. She glared at me as the officers pulled her from the room, but she said nothing further. My heart ached with memories of my wife. Whether he knew it or not, Thomas had given her a little bit of justice, but that didn't excuse his actions. He would be behind bars for a long time. Marin would serve time for being an accessory to murder, for covering up Sean's crimes. I would have preferred to see Sean stand trial, to look into his face with satisfaction as the bailiffs hauled him away. I would have to content myself knowing the truth of my wife's murder had finally been ironed out. Revenge is best served from the dead. My name is Danny Donahue, and I am not your ordinary 14-year-old boy from Southern California. Well, I guess I may be ordinary, except for one teeny thing, but I guess that normal. Nobody is just ordinary. Heck, what does ordinary even mean? I guess I will never know. Because I am not your ordinary boy. I am Danny Donahue, the boy who helps ghosts cross into their next life. Movies weren't wrong. There are ghosts on Earth, and sometimes they might get stuck on Earth because they have unfinished business with someone or themselves. Ugh. They can't even get peace after they die. I thought, when we die, we are finally at peace. I guess, sadly not. Most of the time, it's something simple, like apologizing to someone, or something similar to that. But other times, it was hard. It wasn't because a task was too hard or complicated. No, it was because the ghosts themselves didn't even know what they had left to do. And that is something frustrating. I know what you may be thinking. What do his parents think? Probably think he belongs in the lunny bin. If you thought that, you thought wrong. His parents, Estelle and Banrable Donahue, possessed the same abilities their son had. But this story is my weirdest adventure yet. I still wonder if it actually even happened. It's kind of crazy, and Danny doesn't want to brag or anything, but he was quite awesome, if he had to say. This story started when my family and I had moved from Southern California to New York City. We only had moved here because this was the city populated with wandering souls, which just meant more stress on me. My social life was non-existent. My parents had homeschooled me since 2nd grade, when I began helping them out. But this unbelievable, well, me saying ghosts are real is already quite unbelievable, story started when I moved into my family's new apartment in the busy part of New York. When my parents weren't super cool ghost helpers, they were journalists. And might I add, mighty fine when they did their work. But that meant they barely had time to spend with me. I had opened the bright red door to the quite large apartment, opening my arms and breathing the new place in. I was quite excited to be living here. I never had been to New York before, and it seemed magical. When I had walked into my plain, empty room, I spotted a ghost. Great, can't even sleep one night without someone barging in. Danny grumbled to himself. I didn't think the ghost boy saw me. Who wouldn't? I am pretty handsome, Danny thought, running a hand through his thick black hair. I don't think the dead boy had seen me, and if he had, he hadn't acknowledged me yet. Then the ghost boy had walked over to me from fiddling the sustains and slammed the door behind me. I just realized that the ghost thought I couldn't see him. After I realized that I went over to the formerly alive boy and said, "Hi." Never thought I would have spooked a ghost, but I guess I did, because it looked like the ghost seemed startled. You can see me. The tall ghost pointed up and down to himself, unsure. Since I'm talking to you, I'm pretty sure I can, I said, as it was obvious. Sorry. I'm really dead. The best scenario would be that I was dreaming, but am not. Right? The ghost mumbled on. No, you are sadly dead, and I'm alive, and I can see you, but other people can't. Well, most people can't. By the way, my name is Danny, he stated while putting down boxes of his random junk on the floor. Well, nice to meet you, Danny. My name is Nicholas. The ghost, Nicholas, smiled at him. Danny, come here. We need your help. Danny's dad hollered from outside the apartment. I was sure the whole floor could hear him. Sure thing. Wait, Hold on. You and your parents are going to be living here? Nicholas questioned. And can they see me? Or are you like some chosen one thing? Yes, and yes. My parents can see ghosts too. And our job is to help you move on, Danny said, opening the door and walking over to help his parents. But Nicholas had stayed in the same spot, not wanting to talk to Danny's parents. After all, he hadn't had any interaction with a living or a dead person in 2 years. He had gotten used to staying in the shadows and just listening to other people talk. I had come back with another enormous and heavy box and dropped it on the floor, making a loud whump sound. So, Nicholas, Danny said, testing his name on how it felt in his mouth. Why are you still here? I don't know. Nicholas shrugged. Then think of something stopping you from resting in peace. Then I walked back out of my room to grab more boxes. I had told my parents I had to set up my room and didn't want them to see it. Only after I finished, so I would have an excuse to stay in my room. And plus, Nicholas didn't want to see my parents for some reason. Nicholas and I talked in hushed whispers for hours that day, but he still couldn't think of any reason why he would still be a ghost. But a ghost, technically, is a person who is only partially dead. But he could think of anything. I had, though, learned that Nicholas was 47. But he had died 2 years ago in a drowning accident. I had urged him to tell me the reason for how he drowned, but he didn't say. Until an hour of my excellent persuasion, he told me that he couldn't swim and died before anyone got to him. I always knew I had good convincing skills. A couple of days passed, and still nothing. Danny just wanted to bring Nicholas to his parents, but Nicholas always refused. Ugh, if I went up to him, they would have probably figured out the reason for his reason to stay with the living. Okay, Danny, I think I might know why I am not really dead yet. Nicholas huffed out. He seemed slightly embarrassed, but more so angry. Finally! Been waiting for this for a while, Danny said, stretching back on his chair, taking a break from an easy he had to complete by 2 hours. Okay, so I lied. I didn't die by drowning, just to let you know I can swim. But I was drowned by my kids exactly 2 years ago. And I think the forgive and forget part hasn't exactly worked. And I think I might want revenge on those brats. Nicholas said in a hushed voice, not sure if he really trusted Danny. But if Danny said that he could help him, he might finally get avenged for his death. My eyes literally felt like they might come out of my eye sockets. Hold on, buddy. Just what? Danny said, shock clearly visible on his face. The ghost I always helped had simple tasks, and maybe once in a blue moon, it might be a little interesting. But this was just out of this world crazy. No more like out of the universe. So basically, you're telling me that you were some rich dude with spoiled brats for kids, and then when you were about to die, you decided to change your will so that your sister gets most of it? Danny asked, still thinking this was a really small reason to kill your dad, even if he was a billionaire and didn't even give you 1% of it. Yes, but you see, before I could change the will, they somehow found out about me changing it, so they killed me, so they would get over 80% of my money and estate. What happened to your wife? Danny wondered. She died a year before me, Nicholas said, with a sad smile, probably remembering his wife. So what do you want to do? I'm assuming you want payback, Danny said, raising an eyebrow. Yes, and I have been planning it for 2 years, so it's basically foolproof, Nicholas said with a smile. Family drama. Danny chuckled a little while thinking this. Then, that day, Nicholas told me what he had in mind, and I am not going to lie. It was quite clever. I guess when you have 2 years to think of a plan, and not any plan, a plan to get revenge on your killers, you would want to perfect it. Nicholas had been living in Danny's room for almost a year, and since Nicholas started living in this apartment, he always scared future tenants. Except for the Donahues, because they could see him. The strange thing was my parents still hadn't spotted Nicholas yet. Strange indeed. Nicholas had been living in this apartment specifically because it was right next to, you would never guess who, his kids' apartments. Every time he saw them, he felt sadness for what he let them become. But then the sadness turned into anger, and his blood started boiling whenever he looked at them for what he did to him. The next day, we started putting Nicholas's plan into action. But for one part of it, I had to borrow something from my parents without raising suspicion. I had to borrow a special drink that if a ghost drank it, they would be invisible, but be able to touch not too heavy stuff. I thought talking the elixir would be difficult, but it proved to be easy, since my mom was out meeting some new friends she had made, and my dad had gone grocery shopping. So I took the elixir with ease. After he got it, he gave it to Nicholas, and Nicholas slurped the dark bluish liquid down with one gulp. Slow down, Nicky. You don't want to get a stomach ache, Danny teased. First off, don't call me Nicky, and second, I am too excited. Nicholas seemed exhilarated. After the Donahues' concoction started settling in Nicholas's body, they tested it out to see if it really worked. They even tried the classical ghost picking up book thing, and behold, it worked. Almost as if Nicholas were alive. After that, Nicholas was extremely giddy and excited to get his plan in motion. After what seemed like half an hour, I finally thought we had enough of the playing, and now we had to get the work done. Nicholas had passed through and walked into his daughter, Stella's apartment. It had the same layout of which the Donahues' flat was, but theirs was more on the old side. whereas Stella's place was more modern and high-tech. Danny just had Nicholas go into the apartment and find the key to the front door and slide it over to Danny. Yes, the floor cracks were quite large. Don't worry, she comes back in an hour. So that gives us an hour to play golf, Nicholas said with a smirk, grabbing a baseball bat and ruining all the expensive furniture and decor in the house. I don't mind. I think that this should be all yours. You deserve this, Danny said with a dramatic bow, pretending Nicholas was royalty. He practically was. He was a billionaire. Why, thank you, Nicholas said with amusement. After an hour of playing golf, they had successfully destroyed everything. Then the door opened, and you could hear screaming. But in my opinion, it sounded like a cat being hit by a car. Oh my God. Oh my God. Not that painting. Not that painting. That cost too much to end up like this, said Stella, running around, looking through her apartment. Nicola watched with enjoyment as his daughter was running around checking her possessions that she had bought with his money. After all, it was his money, so it was his stuff too. Hello, Stella. I hoped you learned a lesson about why you shouldn't kill people, especially not family. Nicholas boomed from standing beside the TV, and then she shattered the expensive screen. What are you doing? Who are you? I'm calling with the cops. Get out of my place, Stella yelled back, visibly frightened, trying to sink into a wall and grabbing a hold of a knife. My dear, you don't need to do that. I got a deal to make. Nicholas clearly enjoyed this. I mean, Stella is a murder, so this should be okay. What do you want? Stella stuttered, but tried keeping her head high. I want you to donate all the money you got from your father's will. Why is this your concern? Stella sneered back, still nervous. Don't you cut me off again, Nicholas shouted. The second thing you must do, or I will follow you and haunt you, even in your sleep. So don't you dare disobey me. The second thing you must do is that you and your brother, Jeremy, will have to go to the police station and tell them you committed the murder of Nicholas DeRosa. Understood me? Nicholas seethed out. Stella just grunted and walked out the door, slamming it shut before she left her apartment. Then, Nicholas walked out of the bathroom, where I was hiding behind a shower. I know it's not the best place, but still, you did good, Nicholas. Danny smiled at him, and Nicholas beamed out a smile so bright it would make the sun look like a little flame compared to Nicholas. Nicholas and Danny did the same stuff to Nicholas's son, Jeremy DeRosa. Nicholas and Danny had to repeat this routine for 2 weeks before Jeremy donated his part of the will and went to hand himself in to the police, which meant Stella only had little time left before Jeremy told the police what happened. After a week more of Nicholas's and Danny's torture, Stella couldn't take it anymore. She went to donate her money and hand herself in with a miserable face. She only handed herself in because Nicholas had haunted her so bad that she couldn't even close her eyes to sleep. And she looked and acted like a zombie. After 8 months, I guess that's it, Danny said to Nicholas, who was about to go to the life after death. I guess it is, little buddy. Thanks again. I never thought Jeremy and Stella would be put into prison, but I guess they get their karma. Nicholas thanked Danny. Jeremy and Stella had a trial, and this time, Nichols made sure they didn't just pay the money and not get charged with anything. After 8 months of watching court fights happen, both of the DeRosa kids, well, they aren't really kids, got sent to prison. Goodbye, Danny. Thank you so much. Hope you have a happy ending to your life, Nichols said as he vanished away into thin air, into the afterlife. You may think the story ends here, but you're very wrong. The DeRosa kids had mysteriously died in prison, and they realized that Danny was helping their father scare them. So now the DeRosa kids were after me. And I am now basically a runaway. That I am even on national television. So proud of myself. Stella and Jeremy are coming to kill me for messing up their lives. And I am so going to end up dead meat.